Hello, everyone. My name is Jordyn Smith, and I'm the voice and the astrologer of this YouTube channel, Nonconformist Conscience. I was out last week, and I'm happy to be back again. It was much needed, and there's some things that we need to talk about that I didn't get to last week and that I want to go over this week. Some intense energies for sure. I know that I have even personally been feeling them. So before I do that, I want to let everyone know that my Libra birthday special is running until the 20th. So you have 5 days left to book a session with me. That does not mean that your session has to be between now and the 20th. I actually don't have spots. But as long as you book by the 20th, you can get the Libra birthday special and you can book it for, a month from now, 2 months from now. You could have it for 2 weeks from now. It just has to be booked by the 20th. And so I always want to let people know that I would love to see more Libras in my practice and for us to look at things. And I'm trying to think here if there's any other announcements that I have. I don't have any. I will say on the 20th, it's going to switch over to the Scorpio birthday special, and I'm really, really looking forward to that. As someone who has certain planetary placements, I have a lot in my eighth house, and um, I love Scorpionic people. I love Libra people too. I have a Libra moon, so I just enjoy. I mean, I enjoy all of the signs, but there's a few signs that I really love connecting with because it helps me deepen my own practice and my own knowledge around it. So I'm looking forward to more of you signing up, booking a session. I absolutely love working with each one of you. So without further ado, let's jump into some things. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I want to speak about um, Pluto stationing direct on the 11th, so last week. Again, my apologies, I could not make this video beforehand. I've had just in true Pluto stationing fashion, some things come up personally. But Pluto stationing direct, it's going to re-enter the sign of Aquarius on November 19th. And the way that I really see this energy is that stationing direct was an intensification. Anytime something's stationed in the sky, it means it's standing still. So it's intensifying that energy. And so I don't know if you guys are like me, but as Pluto stationed direct and was aspecting my own natal chart, in true Plutonian fashion, there were things that were exposed. And I think it's really important to understand that ever since 2008, we have had Pluto in the sign of Capricorn, and it's really been wanting us to. There's a few things. Man-made law correlates with Capricorn. It's man-made law are the beliefs, the rules, the taboos, the regulations, the laws, um, the religions, the values of a culture, of a nation, of a collective, of a group. And anywhere you live, if you're in another country, you guys all have, here in America, we have Christianity and manifest destiny, and Italy, there's a lot of Catholicism, and all have religious affiliations, but the way that the collective absorbs this is a bit different. And so, all around the world, there are things playing out that are really wanting us that had started back in 2008. And now that Pluto has stationed direct, it is wanting us to really take the natural expression of Capricorn and very much self-reflect in order to evaluate how these have structured our own individual lives and within our country of origin or our family of origin. Capricorn and Cancer so much relates to family of origin. And so as Pluto stationed direct on the 11th, there could have been an intensification and a deepening of needing to really reflect on how you want to move forward. All this work that we've been doing around our conditioning or things that have been learned. This Pluto stationing direct, especially with, Venus being in Scorpio at the time, and I'm going to get to that in a minute because yesterday and today we've had a transit go on between Venus and Uranus, but there has been this deep need to create a metamorphosis. And I talked about this the other week. Metamorphosis it's one structure turning into a completely different structure. And Capricorn is about structures. It is the ways in which we structure our consciousness. And there is a much needed restructuring going on in the world. And as a lot of us have understood, there is a much needed restructuring going on in each one of our individual consciousnesses. And so this can be where, for some, it's inducing a lot of self-reflection. If there has been a resistance to that, some of us could be experiencing a bit of depression, and depression is meant to get us to do that self-reflection, to go into the polarity of Capricorn, which is Cancer, and into the emotional body and really do our Plutonian work to investigate what's going on here. What is needing to be exposed in order for a new structure to metamorphosize through the dissolving of an old structure. And that's seen with Saturn and Pisces ruling that Pluto. This dissolving and culminating of the old in order for the new to start to restructure and to crystallize an absolute metamorphosis. So I've seen quite a few people in my practice who are going through family stuff and they are really hurting. They're talking about the oppression that's gone on in family systems of not having their voice heard. Cassandra is in Capricorn, and so that makes a lot of sense as well. Not having their voice heard, not being believed, not being seen. And Saturn and Pisces can be really about us needing to dissolve those old dynamics of trying to control an outcome that's pulling in this cardinal cross that's going on. But we can also be being confronted with the ways in which we have learned to structure our lives. There's this need to really take our own sense of authority and to ask and answer our own questions and to make our own judgment calls about things. My friend Kristen, she was talking to me. I remember I was telling her something that was going on in my life as Pluto stationed, and she was like, it's the clearing of the deck. And it is. And I'm pretty sure her and Laura Nabal had a conversation about this. But it is. It's a clearing of the deck. It's wanting things to be released. Saturn and Pisces is wanting us to transcend these old limitations in order for a restructuring of our consciousness to occur. And so there have been these lessons, and there will continue to be throughout this period of where we will get these Capricornian soul tests to really show us, are you who you used to be, or have you been restructuring? How are you doing this differently? I can tell you, for me, it's about not being reactive, but being responsive. When things are going on and I want to blow up because I feel an injustice is happening, and really having to ground, very earth sign kind of energy, and just know that my intention is coming from a pure place. And that's part of Saturn and Pisces. It's us being confronted with the totality of the truth of what's occurring. And during this period of time until the 19th, we're still in this period of time where we're being tested. We have these things go on externally that trigger and evoke an emotional reaction or an emotional response. It's Capricorn pulling in that Cancer. And then with the North Node in Aries and the South Node in Libra, it's asking for us to create harmony and balance by utilizing everything we've been learning and self-reflecting on of the past, especially pertaining to a variety of relationships that we've had, Libra, and to now really put into action North Node in Aries, new emotional patterns, Mars in Cancer, that are more grounded into our sovereignty, into our own personal sense of authority. And that means making correct judgment. So when we're getting triggered or there's something that's coming up, it is teaching us this lesson that you don't ever have to be who you once were. You can make a different choice. And it doesn't matter what people's expectations are about your response to certain things. The only person who's really judging you is yourself. And so it's about during this time to make correct judgment through that self-reflection and really tapping into the emotional body to discover more about ourselves, our own psychology, our own inner emotional dynamics. That way we can cultivate new patterns that are more in alignment with our authenticity. And that brings me to Jupiter stationing retrograde that occurred on the 9th. And at the time, it was ruled by Mercury in Libra. And I'm going to get to Mercury's transit through Scorpio in just a minute, but Jupiter stationing retrograde in the sign of Gemini is where we are called to turn inwards, to really liberate. Retrogrades have a Uranian function. They are individuating function. They tend to speed up our evolution, but they are a very individualistic process. And Jupiter retrograde in Gemini could be having us throw off some of this old information that has been learned pertaining to, at whenever this stationed, it was Mercury in Libra, how we do relationships and how we need to continue to individuate through our own authenticity and to self-discover and learn more about ourselves. And so there's this deepening that's wanting to occur where we're meant to rely on our God-given gift of intuition. What feels authentic and true for each one of us. And that gets me to Mercury and Scorpio, which it ingressed into Scorpio on the 13th, and it's going to stay there until November 2nd. So this is going to help with this this Jupiter retrograde function. Jupiter retrograde in Gemini is this need to really internalize. It's interesting. Gemini is the outer expression of Mercury, whereas Virgo is the inner expression. And with Jupiter and Gemini retrograde, it's pulling in more of a Virgo function. There's this need to really observe and objectify what has been learned and to internalize it in a different way. And with Mercury and Scorpio, it's about getting to the bottom of how we've internalized things and where we need to liberate from them. Have you taken in the voices of others that are getting in the way of you feeling authentic or understanding your own personal truth? That could look at learned beliefs, even about oneself, that have become self-fulfilling prophecies. You know, whenever I was younger, I was told a lot that because I was different and school was really, it was interesting. I was smart and I actually got asked to skip like a grade 2 different years, didn't do it, but I became where I didn't really care about school because I didn't feel like it was pertinent to what I was the path, what felt authentic for me in this lifetime. And I got a lot of pushback. I also have Jupiter retrograde. And so that's an individuating function, is you're also recovering something that is about your truth. And so at this point in time, I started to hear things. They were projections around how I chose to learn or what I chose to learn about that really had an effect on me and became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, if you continue to do this, you're going to be a drug addict. If you continue to do this, you're never going to amount to anything. If you continue to do this, you're going to flip burgers at McDonald's. I remember hearing that a lot. And all of those things that I had been told had actually came true because I internalized them. And then whenever I got older, in true Capricornian fashion, I had to take accountability for my own healing, for how I internalized that, and how I had essentially made a choice to act that out because I internalized those beliefs that were false. And what I learned was through that journey, and I'm continuing to, is that my personal truths are that I'm smart, that I'm intelligent, that I'm imaginative, that I can be a bit idealistic at times, that I um, have great depth, and that oftentimes it's misunderstood because it's different than the people around me and how they internalize or how they view things. And I learned a very Gemini and Libra lesson that there's unity and diversity, that that's actually really cool, that each one of us is different and unique, and each one of us has our own personal truths about us on a soul level that make us extremely special, but not more important than each other. We're all equally important. And so it's been a lifetime of healing, of throwing off the voices of others that I have internalized. And so Jupiter retrograde, especially now with Mercury in the sign of Scorpio, can really be getting us to the bottom of where have we internalized a belief and where do we need to recover a truth? How have our participation in believing those things about ourselves that are so against our nature and our authenticity, how have they affected you psychologically and emotionally? Who do you need to have conversations with? Mercury and Scorpio can have us be having these really deep, intense conversations with people that really help us discover more about our personal truths through comparing and contrasting, and not in a bad way, in an actually really beautiful way, a way that's like what I was saying, there's unity and diversity. It makes us see the beauty in life. Like, oh, you think this way, or this is your truth, well, this is mine, and oh my gosh, that's so cool, we're so different. um but it is about really trying to liberate through our from our internalized thinking or the voices of others, something that's been learned at this time. It's also about having discernment, especially with Mercury and Scorpio, of the information that we're taking in, who we're choosing to communicate with. Mercury and Scorpio can be having us, especially with the South Node still in Libra, can be having us have to discern who is safe, who has the ability to have these conversations that speak to a deepening in our understanding, that are in a beneficial way. My son is downstairs and I can hear him. He's on fall break. He's screaming like a banshee. Excuse me. Um, this is really important to understand too, because Pluto in its final like time span of being in Capricorn with Saturn in Pisces, it can bring a lot of healing when we do this inner work of self-reflection. So on the one hand, Jupiter and Gemini is wanting us to look at what feels authentic to us. It's having us deepening our intuition. Jupiter is about our intuition. It's ruled by Mercury in Scorpio, and that Mercury is ruled by Pluto in Capricorn. It's wanting us to deeply reflect on how we've internalized certain things, but to take accountability and responsibility for the choices we've made after we've internalized that. Doesn't mean that we need to feel guilt or shame about that. It's that whole Maya Angelou quote, when we know better, we do better, and we just keep moving on. But Mercury and Scorpio can really have us wanting to expose these limitations within around our thinking, our communication, and where we've internalized something that might have become a self-fulfilling prophecy that is not conducive to our soul growth or our actual unique, authentic soul nature. Because it's having us want to have a metamorphosis of how we have structured everything within by looking at this content in a very deep way. We also have that Saturn in Pisces, like I was saying, that can help us to transcend these limitations and promote healing when we have the courage to look at this. Mars is moving into an opposition with Pluto. Mars is in Cancer. I will make a video about this next week, but with all of this condensed energy right now, that is such an internalized process. Even though Pluto is direct, it's still internal because it is Capricorn and it's wanting us to go within. Mars here in Cancer is saying, look at all of these emotional dynamics. And whenever I reach this opposition, there can be things that are needing to be thrown off so a metamorphosis of a new structure can occur within our consciousness. And so again, this time period of not only Pluto direct, not going into Aquarius until the 19th of November, but during this time period, Mars is moving into this opposition. And it's going to have a few oppositions to Pluto. This is the first one. This means that when we get oppositions, okay, or any type of aspect, and we get multiple passes, and we're going to get multiple passes with Pluto and Mars because Mars is going to retrograde soon. Again, I will get into that whenever the time comes, but that first initial aspect that's imperfection can really intensify. It can make it so clear. And with Saturn and Pisces ruling that Pluto, it can be where we're confronted with the reality of the truth of some type of emotional dynamic that has been crystallized or suppressed, repressed, or where we've experienced oppression, and it's had us bury this deep within. And with Mars ruling that North Node, it's really wanting to be exposed, these emotional dynamics. So again, we can take this as wisdom, Capricorn, and then we can cultivate new patterns of emotional dynamics, how we emotionally relate to ourselves, of how it's about growing up. That we're in an emotional maturation process, and that Mars and Cancer, Pluto and Capricorn dynamic is very much about being your own mother and father, being the authority in your life while also nurturing and validating yourself and your own experiences, but also taking accountability for where maybe you did make an incorrect judgment call, but also you're being tested to make a correct one, because that's going to help with the opposition. And as Mars does its 2 more passes later on in the year, it'll help us get better and better at this dynamic. So I want us to keep that in mind. So today is the 15th. And I want to say that yesterday and today, Venus is in an opposition to Uranus. Uranus is ruled by this Venus. Venus is in Scorpio. It is ruled by Pluto. This is where we can have shocks occur. Venus is also trining Neptune and Pisces. Neptune is the ruler of Pluto, and remember that Pluto is ruling Venus. So there's a few things to unpack here. There's this need to throw off these old values and crystallizations that have affected our sense of self-esteem, our self-worth, our inner psychology, our own emotional dynamics. It's about self-reflecting in order for that to happen. Uranus is in the mix. That can mean that there's something sudden and unexpected that happens as an external event to get us to Pluto and Capricorn to self-reflect, to go inward, to look at this, to do Venus and Scorpio, to get to the depths of our soul and our own inner relationship to self. Especially Venus is ruling that South Node in Libra. This can be in our relationships with others. All of a sudden, there's a shock. Something's gone on. We lost something all of a sudden. We are experiencing abandonment, rejection, betrayal. And something I often talk about is that betrayal can come in the form of not being heard, understood, or believed. Venus so much has to deal with the ability to hear where another is coming from, someone else's ability to hear where you're coming from, and also the ability to listen to oneself. Uranus and Taurus is giving us this opportunity to really, when we self-reflect, Pluto and Capricorn, we can throw off dynamics by listening to ourselves and having discernment around correct judgment calls. Are you being confronted with the actual truth of a situation? Venus trining Neptune, Neptune ruling Saturn and Pisces, is where that confrontation can occur, but also when we have acceptance and we don't deny or we don't make excuses for it, we can actually move through it, and we can utilize the wisdom from our prior experiences that we've had direct experiences with in order to discern and to make correct judgment. But this is not a time to deny a reality or a truth of something that's occurring. This is about surrendering to the truth and working with it. That doesn't mean, it makes me think of, with this trine from Venus to Neptune, it makes me think of radical acceptance. And I'm not talking about bypassing emotional dynamics or resisting them. I'm talking about where, especially if we're dealing with more of the scorpionic dynamics and a shock of something, of where we have radical acceptance that we're not surprised. Doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt. That we're not uncomfortable, that we're not confused, because it can be something that's so shocking that it's like, oh my God, how could that even occur? How could someone do that? What is the logic in that? The list goes on. But it's also where we can have radical acceptance of the situation. That also, I've been dealing with this dynamic for a long time, and this actually doesn't really surprise me. So now I'm confronted with the truth. What is the choice I'm going to make now to move forward? So there's that. And then that leads me to, I want to bring up this chart. Let's see here. That's Jupiter. No. That leads me to this Aries full moon happening on the 17th of October. I want to point out a few things to you guys, and then I'll bring this down and then I'll talk about it. Pluto is in the second house. It is ruled by Saturn retrograde in the third. Pluto is sextile Venus. And this is really important. Mars, the ruler of this full moon, is in the seventh in Cancer, ruled by the moon, or in mutual reception. And this Mars is also conjunct the north node of Jupiter and the north node of Pluto. So, a few things. A full moon, as I say, I feel like oftentimes, and by the way, Venus will be moving into Sag later on in the evening of that day. A full moon is the ending, the culmination of a 6-month cycle. So think back to 6 months ago when there was a new moon in Aries, and this is where everything that we've been learning has reached, it's being illuminated. The sun is opposing the moon. The moon is full. It's glowing. It's bright. It's also its gravitational pull on us as souls inhabiting a structure, Capricorn, that is full of water, is really getting the emotions to come up. And that's doubled down by Mars, the ruler of this, in the sign of Cancer in that 7th house. And so there are quite a few dynamics that I want to speak to here about this, which is there's a lot around self-actualization because that moon is in the 5th house. And it's about self-actualizing through cultivating new emotional patterns, Mars and Cancer, that are actually in alignment with more of natural and matriarchal types of ways of thinking, being, not man-made. So this full moon is about us throwing off and liberating the sun in Libra in the 11th, these old dynamics that we've been talking about that have perpetuated imbalances, especially in our relationships with others, stemming from what has been learned. With Mars conjunct the north node of Jupiter and Pluto, I'm actually going to show this to you. This is important. Mars, the ruler, conjunct that north node of Pluto and Jupiter. I want you to know that this is an ascendant at 17 degrees Sag, and it is ruled by Jupiter retrograde. All right, so it's pulling in a lot of Sag energy. Sag is about natural law. There is this need for us to self-actualize right now through being courageous to look at the emotional dynamics of what has been learned, Jupiter retrograde, to throw off things that are getting in the way of us moving forward and creating and cultivating more balance and harmony that's more in alignment with natural law as a part of this restructuring process. Jupiter, Sag, north node of Jupiter is about natural law. This goes back to what I was saying about Jupiter retrograde in Gemini, the need to get to the bottom of what has been learned, how it's affected us emotionally and psychologically, and to throw it off, to liberate 11th house that have perpetuated imbalances, and to align ourselves with more natural truths. And this is also, Pluto is in the 2nd house in Cap at 29. This is about dismantling these structures within that have affected our sense of security, our sense of self, our self-esteem, our self-worth, our ability to survive, our values, what we give meaning to. And the sextile from Pluto to Venus is really about understanding this natural law of that we don't need anyone to complete us. And we're wanting to wrap up a whole evolutionary cycle of the ways in which we've inwardly related to ourselves that are more structured around man-made values, laws, beliefs that have been learned, that have induced guilt, shame, judgment, fear, trauma, and the need to now cultivate a new pattern of awareness in our emotional dynamics that helps us create equilibrium, balance, that helps us get to the actual truth of our natures, to understand who we are, and that it's an act of self-love, and to forgive ourselves for not knowing better in the past. It is very much asking for all of us to get to the bottom of all of this that has been learned and conditioned, Pluto and Capricorn, and how we've internalized it. So this is like one of the last shebangs of this Pluto and Cap. And this full moon can really expose what might not have been known or what we might have resisted or suppressed. And it's wanting us to get into the emotional body so that way we can have this metamorphosis to Aries, cultivate new patterns. When we work on ourselves, on our inner relationship, it helps us to have healing and healthier and non-toxic relationships with others. It also helps us to discern, you know, who should I share with? Who should I trust? So this can be bringing up all types of dynamics, and this can be around family, friends, partners, anything like that, and dredging this up to really confront us with how have you structured this and how do you need to restructure? I love talking about natural law, that it's a Saggy, Gemini, Piscean, um, Virgo dynamic. And on a collective level, I want to say that this is an opportunity for us as a collective to really cultivate new patterns around aligning ourselves with more natural laws that are timeless and universal. Seeing as Saturn is in Pisces retrograde, there can be something, and it's in the third house of that chart. It's wanting us to throw off the old structures and to transcend those limitations, Pisces, by taking in, and it's really not by taking in, it's more of remembering who we naturally are as a collective soul, that we are rooted in giving, sharing, and inclusion. We are not by nature exclusionary. That also leads me to want to talk about there can be dynamics right now where there can be those around us that are really inducing an inner confrontation of what this can look like when natural law is not expressed, whenever it's more in this distorted kind of man-made way. And for the men who are listening, I'm not meaning as a man, I'm meaning like human law that has gotten so far away from what is natural and timeless. So I don't want that to be taken in a wrong way. But this is where we can be being confronted with emotional dynamics of all of a sudden we're either experiencing or we're seeing exclusion or people hurting or harming other people for the sake of their own beliefs or what they have been making excuses for because they're not wanting to grow either. And the key is during this time period to ask yourself, why am I calling this in? And it's not because you're deserving it. I don't want us to get into that kind of thinking that is victimized. It's more of this can be showing you something that you're needing to learn about who you allow into your life, your own boundaries that you have, what you will and will not accept, what you're willing to listen to, what you're willing to communicate, who you're willing to communicate with, who you're willing to surround yourself with, why you were participating this in the past, meaning that you were participating in it by having someone or something in your life that now you're seeing is really not rooted in something authentic. It's more rooted in exclusion and fear-based dynamics. We can look all over the world and see this happening right now. This can be where we're experiencing external events or we're being confronted with our own internal dynamics of trying to have power and control. And that is not rooted in giving, sharing, and inclusion. It's not rooted in universal and timeless principles. This can also give us the opportunity on the flip side to not be all gloom and doom here, that we can really have these confrontations, and confrontations don't have to be bad. They can just be like, oh, that's a surprise. Again, it's having radical acceptance of that was surprising, shocking, but I'm not surprised, right? I'm accepting of this. Like, what is this teaching me? It has a bit of curiosity to it. And that's great for Jupiter and Gemini in this chart. That's retrograde. But it can have us where we get to have the conversations that can be healing, where maybe we weren't in a situation where there was unity and diversity. Maybe that we're needing to hear where another is coming from, where we're being given the opportunity to share with someone. But this is about Capricornian making a correct judgment call. This is about wrapping up so much that has been going on for so long in each one of our lives and on a collective level. And it's really trying to get us to cultivate these new patterns of where we're recovering natural values, natural needs, natural tendencies that have nothing to do with power, control, coercive control, exclusion. This makes me think I just dealt with something where I was told that something was invite only. Um, and it wasn't an invite only. It was, I don't want to go into this too much, but I had to laugh about it because that's the only thing I could do. So that's another tool that you can use during this time if you have something going on, is to really use Sag on that ascendant and that Jupiter ruling it to kind of laugh at the absurdity of what you're seeing go on whenever there is a metamorphic restructuring wanting to occur. And we can't control the outcome of others. We can surrender to the truth of the reality of the situation, but we damn sure can laugh about it and about the absurdity of it. And it brings levity and healing. And it also teaches us that we don't have to participate in behavior like that. We don't have to feel victimized by circumstances. This is like, I mean, I'm just going to say it, with Venus and Scorpio, sextile to Pluto and Capricorn. It really shows that there's a metamorphosis of our inner relationship going on, but it's like a big pimple. Something might need to be popped to relieve the pressure first, and then for us to be like, huh, okay, now this can start healing. I can, put a poultice on this, or I can soak this in Epsom salt, or I can do this, or I can do that. But there's an eruption that's wanting to happen with this full moon for a lot of people. And it's to clear the energy. It's to have a purge of the old in order for a space for something new to emerge, for it to become restructured. It's, before the caterpillar turns into a butterfly, it turns into goo, period. Um, and so there is this dynamic of us needing to definitely have Aries courage to face what we might not want to face, and to then honor ourselves and connect with what is authentic and natural about us, the person who you want to be, who you know you are, and to make the correct judgment to act accordingly to that, to be responsive, not reactive, to create harmony and balance in your life, to clear what no longer serves you. This can be a lunation that is like, maybe I do not need to be around this anymore. It is not conducive for my emotional or psychological well-being. And I have to look at why I have made choices that have led to this situation. And now I need to move on because I'm realizing I've grown so much that this is not aligning with who I am anymore. And there is nothing wrong with that. And I want you all to know that. Okay. This is your weekly forecast. I want you to be gentle with yourselves. This is a come to Jesus moment for a lot of us. And here's the thing is that there is free will, and you want to make sure that you're discerning what it is that feels authentic for you right now. And that doesn't mean bypassing the emotional dynamics that are coming up. Again, it's like a pimple that's wanting to be popped. There's been so much pressure, and we've been self-reflecting and we've been looking at it, but with Venus and in Scorpio, sextile to Pluto, and Venus ruling Uranus, which it will technically still be opposing during this lunation, and Venus being ruled by that Pluto, and Venus ruling the South Node, it is about metamorphosizing our prior limitations and having a radical transformation of our inner relationship to self by saying no more. No more to this. And on a collective level, we're seeing it as well. And it is and can be intense, but it is about being sovereign. And it is about aligning yourself with what is natural and authentic. And it is about clearing out the clutter of what has been learned that is impeding upon you knowing yourself or has affected you, where you felt guilt or shame or judgment that is not natural, that has been learned. This is all wanting to just be purged in order for health and new patterns to come into place now. The last thing I do want to say, I was ahead of myself, is later on in the day, Venus will enter the sign of Sag. It will be ruled by Jupiter and Gemini, and this will bring a lot of levity for us. It will also help us to, especially for those that get confronted with a truth of situation, it can help us to really reconnect with what feels authentic and helping us to throw off what has been learned that is impeding upon us knowing our personal truths as opposed to those beliefs. It can also have us very much cultivating our intuition and us having intuitive guidance, knowing, understanding about how to move forward. Jupiter is innately mutable. It's in a mutable sign, and Venus is now going to be in a mutable sign. So it's going to help us to adapt to our situations in order for us to move forward with more levity. And that is going to be through trusting our intuition as we move forward. So I hope to see more of you in my office. It's actually my kids' playroom. I am actually really ready for all of this. Like, I'm like, oof, let's like pull this Band-Aid off so we can move forward. That's kind of this vibe that's going on. And then we get lovely Venus and Sag to help us along the way. But if you have been experiencing stuff, I want you to talk about it. If you want to, come see me. Libras, you have 5 days left to book a session. Book it whenever, but it's got to be booked by the 20th. And then Scorpio, it's going to be your turn. I'm very excited. And yeah, I think that's it. I will see you all soon, and I can't wait to see more of you.